Well, we are recording now, and I'm kind of still only recovering from the trauma of.
Oh, I'm in like I've got that like fight or flight, like manic panic mode, gay
Anyway,
panic.
we can tell everyone what we're talking about, but first of all, I'll just say welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where two exes who are still really good friends talk about life, love, politics, draping flowers over our shoulders, and gay frenzy related to Lady Gaga tickets. So what have you got over your shoulder?
So just if you haven't watched or listened to us before, my name is Josh, and that was Sean just talking there. And I'm just because I've changed my plants around. I wanted to highlight this flower because it's just so pretty. I'm not gonna have it draped over my shoulder for the entire episode. But when I first sat down, I realized I was obscuring the flower, and so I just wanted our viewers. If you're listening to this on Spotify, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But for those that are watching on YouTube, you can see this lovely flower. So anyway, I'm going to put it away now. So
What is it? Did you say what it
I
is?
knew. Do you know what? I knew you were going to ask me that, and I can't pronounce the Latin name. It starts with an A.
Oh, okay.
It's Aey something. Acanthus or something.
Oh, okay. Is
Which
it
doesn't.
part of a particular plant family that people might be familiar with?
I believe I could be wrong, but I believe it's in the. This is turning into a very botanical podcast all of a sudden. I think it's in the like the Gerbera family. I think I could be completely wrong on that
The
actually.
gerbil family. Gerbera.
Gerbera, and that's the thing with the Latin names. I never know. I know a lot of them, to sort of see on the screen or to write them down, but when it comes to pronunciation. I'm just sort of guessing. It's like a stab in the dark. It's like there's a plant at work. Oh, sorry, I've just moved my computer because my light's about to fall over. But we have a plant at work which is Trachycarpus wagnerianus. But then I'm like, should it be wagnerianus? Um,
Hairy anus.
Hairy anus. So yeah, and it's got a hairy trunk as well. So you could actually say it's a hairy anus. And anyway, this episode's fast going down a rabbit hole.
Okay, but what else we're in a flap about is
You
that
can
we've both
explain.
been trying to buy Lady Gaga tickets today for the Mayhem Ball World Tour, because we're little monsters and we are in a frenzy about the new album and the tour, and we were both online trying to get tickets. I mean, we were trying to buy them in multiple cities to cover our bases.
Mhm.
And Josh was successful and ended up getting us tickets for Paris.
Yeah, it's the last night of the tour. Well, she may announce more dates, but for now, anyway, it's the last night of the tour and it's in Paris. And so I got 4 tickets, and it's going to be me, Sean, his husband Hill, and our friend Anna, who we refer to a lot on this podcast, also known as Sue. And Sue is actually down in London at the moment, staying with me. So she was there when all this was happening. So it was quite an exciting, if not stressful, morning.
But the nightmare scenario was, I mean, Paris was difficult to get tickets to, but it was nothing in comparison to the ridiculous situation with Manchester.
Oh, it was a shit show, absolute shit show. And like Sean and I were on the phone for over an hour. This was so the Paris ones, because of the time difference. Paris is an hour ahead. This happened an hour before the Manchester ones, and then an hour later we were on the phone, and we were trying for so long to get tickets for Manchester. And I don't know. I just think Co-op. I don't know. I just don't know if they know what they're doing.
Mean, for people who don't know, there's a business which is, I mean, it's owned by members, right? The cooperative.
It's a cooperative by name, cooperative by nature. Yeah.
So it's mostly known as a supermarket chain or a grocery store chain, and if you become a member, you are a part owner. I mean, you don't get any money, do you? Like, you're just a member.
No, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think like you and I are members of the actual organization.
And they do lots of other products as well, like insurance,
banking.
Banking
phone. Is the main, banking and supermarkets are what they're known for mostly.
They've also got funeral homes,
yeah,
funeral care.
Yeah.
business around the UK, but
Mm.
they've also now are the sponsor of a large sporting and entertaining complex called Co-op Live, and it's a
Yeah.
big arena that holds about 18,000 people in Manchester city centre. And this is where Lady Gaga is playing in Manchester later this year.
Mm.
And we thought, well, we are co-op members, so they did a pre-sale through the app where you get early access to the tickets. And when you logged in, what number in the queue are you?
I was about 6,000, I think, and it went. I got through, but by the time I got through, anyway, do you know what? Maybe our listeners don't need to know the minutiae of what we went through. Suffice to say, we didn't get tickets for the Manchester show, but we already had tickets for the Paris show, so it wasn't. It would have been very, very disappointing if we didn't have those Paris tickets.
We'll always have Paris, Sue, like you
Always have
said before.
Paris.
What's
So
that a
yeah,
famous line from?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll always have Paris.
But this whole thing with how pre-sales work now, like back in
Mm.
my day when I was a youngin, we
Hmm.
used to camp out for concert tickets because you'd buy
Yeah.
them physically. There was no internet, so you would buy them physically from the box office,
Yeah.
and it sometimes would be just the box office for the venue, and sometimes there would be like ticket agencies around the city where you would go and you could line up and they would all go on sale at the same time.
Yeah, like little record stores and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like sometimes they would physically have tickets there. So each location would get maybe 50 tickets to sell or 100 tickets to sell or more,
Mm.
depending how big they were. And
Mm.
then when technology started coming in, the tickets were online in a computer system. And then
Mm.
they would just allocate you the tickets and print them out there for you then and there. But now it's moved to be these online waiting rooms where you're waiting with like tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. And I think, wasn't I saying even on the podcast about 3, 4 weeks ago, I was trying to get tickets for that Brandy Carlisle and Elton John concert at the London
Yeah.
Palladium. And I got in the queue as soon as I could get in the queue. And I was something like, I don't know, it's like 111,000 in queue. And I just thought, well, you know, as if for a 3 or 4,000 capacity venue, there's no way in hell I'm going to get tickets. So anyway,
And
it's frustrating.
there's lots of scammers. I looked on social media before, and there are
Mm.
lots of people doing posts saying, "Oh, I managed to get 2 extra tickets for Manchester
Mm.
that I don't need anymore for the Gaga show. DM me." And
Mm.
I mean, there are dozens and dozens of these messages, and so it's
Yeah.
scams where people are
Yeah.
trying to. They haven't bought the
So
tickets.
many scams, so many
They're going to
scams.
just.
Going back to plants, which I know is where we started, but
Mhm.
I'm on a couple of plant forums, online forums, because I am a self-confessed proud plant geek, and there are scammers on there as well. Like I put posts on before saying, "Oh, does anyone have seeds of this plant? Anyone know where I can buy seeds? I'm happy to pay." Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And then once I almost fell for it once because someone, and they're very clever about it. They messaged me. They created a profile. They messaged me, and they said, "Oh, I just bought some seeds from." And they'll name another user on the forum, but one that's like quite prominent, a well-known user on the forum. So
Yeah,
they'll say, "Oh, I just bought some from I don't know, like Matt in San Diego, for example.
yeah.
I just bought some from Matt in San Diego, and I think he's got some more. Email him here." And and there'll be an email address. And so I started emailing, and then there were just things. There were like spelling mistakes and stuff in their emails, and I was like, "Hang on a minute, this is obviously a scam, right?" Luckily, before I handed over any money. And then
Yeah.
I messaged Matt in San Diego. That's not his real username, but I messaged
Is
the
his
other user.
username Green Thumb 69?
No. Um, and he was like, yeah, he said, I haven't got seeds to that plant. I haven't sold seeds for that plant. It's a scam. And I was like, thank God I checked. Like, there are scammers everywhere,
There's
basically.
nothing safe. Like there is
No.
nowhere not to be scammed. Like my great hacking that happened, the
Mm-hmm.
hackathon,
Mm-hmm.
scams. Like when I was moving back to London, and a few years ago, and there was an ad on
Oh, yeah.
a listing, and it was like a
For accommodation, right?
accommodation listing for an apartment near King's Cross or a flat near
Mm.
King's Cross. and the guy was saying, "Oh, I've been burnt before, so I need you to send me a deposit before I can lock in a viewing." So
Yeah.
it's like, mate, like,
Yeah.
but imagine how many people would do that.
I know.
Like,
I know.
how much money could you make from scamming people like that? That's why we were talking about scammers last
Yeah.
episode,
Peter
talking
Smith.
about Peter Smith and Crime Watch. Like, there are people that's their job. Their full time job
Yeah.
is to be
Yeah.
scammers.
Yeah.
So with like concert tickets, um, you know, I used to have to camp out for tickets. I think the first time I ever camped out for tickets was to see Prince
Mm.
on the Diamonds and Pearls tour, which, talking of Diamonds and Pearls, last episode as well,
Mm-hmm.
Diamond and or Pearl. And we camped out for 2 nights because it was before the internet, you had to physically be there to get tickets. And if
Mm-hmm.
you weren't in the first few people at your box office, because there were maybe about 40 box office around the city selling them,
Mm.
you would end up with not very good seats.
Mm-hmm.
But and then when Madonna toured Australia for the first time, we camped out for 5 nights in a row to get tickets, to be front row and first
I
person
mean,
in line to
it's,
buy tickets.
in a way, there's a part of me that thinks that's in some ways a fairer way to do it. Like, if you're willing to put in the effort and if you're willing to, like, really, suffer some sort of adversity to get the tickets, then you're maybe more deserving of it. But then obviously I know that's not equitable because, not everyone can do that. Not, people have to work, people may have different abilities and not able to camp out for 5 nights. And also you're talking about an Australian climate. If, in this part of the world, it's not really that feasible to camp
Yeah.
out for,
Well,
but
at the for the Madonna 5 nights, just to buy the tickets, I had to take annual leave from my work. I had to use my
right.
holiday allowance, and then we took a mattress down and just
Mm,
slept outside the ticket selling place in
yeah.
Redcliffe.
Mm,
And I mean, it was just like a carnival. I mean, because I got there 5 nights before, somebody got there just not long after me. Like, I was first in line, but somebody got
mm.
there not long after me. And then after, I think, a couple of nights went by where it was just us, like 4 people, and then people started coming. People got the frenzy and
On
started to
like what, on
come.
the 2 nights before?
Yeah, maybe about 2 nights before, 3 nights before, people started to
Mm,
come. And then, yeah, but then people were coming down, like drunk hooligans were coming down. They heard people were sleeping out for Madonna,
right, yeah.
and it was a bit scary, but then it also became quite fun. But
Mm,
it also was just like mind-alteringly bizarre to be
mm,
outside, sleeping outside. Luckily, we were sort of under an awning,
mm.
and like you said, the climate is a lot more.
I mean,
Um,
I don't think I could do that now. I was trying to think, was it last week or a couple of weeks ago when I said, if No Doubt reformed and they played London, they played the O2, I would go to that. But even then, I don't think I would necessarily. I don't think I'm too old now to be camping outdoors for tickets. So, I mean, I like the idea of an online system, but
but
just it doesn't always
like, the
work.
weird thing, like when I logged into the co-op thing, I logged in about 5 minutes before you.
Yeah,
And then I'd message you and said, "Hey, I'm in the waiting room. Get on." You got
yeah.
in the waiting room, and then
And
when
then
you got in, you were like number 5,000 in
I was
queue.
in about 20 minutes before you. Well, you never even got in, did you?
No,
No.
I got into the room before you, but then
Yeah.
you got in after me, and you were at
Well,
number
that's
5,000,
that's
and
what
then
I
I
mean.
was at
I
number 18,000 or
I
something.
think when you're in the waiting room, it doesn't matter at what point you join the waiting room. As soon as it goes live, they just randomly assign people in that waiting room, in the virtual waiting room. They
That's annoying to me because it kind of feels like you do
Yeah,
everything you need to do. Like, you
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure everything's logged in, you get everything ready, you're waiting, you put the time in.
I
If it's
know,
random, like,
I
why
know,
bother? Like, why
I
not
know,
just? Yeah.
I know. Just another of life's shitty adventures. Anyway, the good thing is we got the Paris tickets, so we're seeing that come what may, and then we'll
And we
try and
talked about your favorite song on the Gaga album is a song called "How Bad Do You Want Me?" And
yes,
last night at the open mic, you performed a mashup
I
of
did,
your song called "Empty Seat,"
which is the
which,
theme music for
yeah,
this podcast. Yep.
and a mashup of that with the Lady Gaga song "How Bad Do You Want Me?"
Yes.
How do you think your mashup went?
Well, I loved it. I enjoyed. I really enjoyed last night. I thought it was a really fun night. We had a great crowd, had some amazing performers, and I just enjoyed the sort of the real collaborative community aspect of it because I did I don't know, 3, 4 songs by myself. I did a song with
Yeah.
Jonathan, my friend Jonathan, with accompanying me on keyboard. I did backup vocals for my friend Sky on one of her songs, and it was just such a lovely night. And then yeah, I loved,
Oh,
even
you
though
also you also played piano for Manny.
oh yeah, that's right. I played Manny. Manny's a poet and spoken word artist, and I did sort of a piano, which he didn't warn me about. So I was like, when he said, "Will you do a bit of atmospheric piano for this?" I was like, oh, "God, I don't, I'm not sure I'm best qualified, but I think it was okay. I
I
think it
think
was
it
all
sounded
right."
really good. I think it elevated that
Okay,
performance.
good, because I've done it for him before, and I think maybe I haven't quite, because I don't know what piece it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know
So did
how to
you
pitch
just
it.
freestyle that piece of music?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the Gaga mashup with my song. I mean, it was really fun when I figured out that had the same chord progression.
Hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I've got to do this. But there were some people in the audience who clearly are obsessed with the new album, as am I, because they knew it and they were singing along. But I think
Yeah.
some people were like, "What's going on? I don't understand," because they obviously haven't become obsessed with the new Gaga album like you and I have.
But because I was behind the curtain,
Mm.
like the Wizard of Oz, I was doing the sound. It sounds so pretentious when I say I'm doing sound. I do not know how to do sound. I do not know how to
Well,
operate any of the
you do a good enough job though.
equipment, but I'm in charge of like the playlist and queuing people's tracks if they've got a backing track, and then
Hmm.
sort of making sure there's no moments of silence. So if someone's tuning, I put the music back on a bit low, like
Hmm.
low level. Um, but even from behind the curtain, because I can't see what's going on, I can't see through that curtain. I can just see shapes moving.
Hmm.
But I could hear people in the crowd singing the Gaga
Oh, good,
bits.
good. Because on stage you can't really hear the crowd so much because you've got the speaker right in front of
Hmm.
you. But okay, that's good. I'm glad people were getting along. Did it
It,
sound okay to you then?
yeah, yeah, it was very what's the term, like rollicking, like it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
very, because
yeah,
that's how the song is, right? It's
yeah,
very like balls to the wall, Sue.
yeah. It's a brilliant song. Maybe we should make that the theme song for the podcast, although we need to get sign off from Gaga,
We
obviously.
can't afford Gaga. We couldn't even get
No,
fucking Manchester tickets. How are we going to
no,
get
true.
permission? But that was one of the best nights for the open mic, from a point of view of attendance.
Yeah, it was a really great crowd, really warm, fun, yeah, vibe. I'm still on a high.
Hey, do you know, like whenever we say, "Oh, we'll put a link to something in the," do we always do that? Do you always put
Pretty
links to
much, yeah,
things?
pretty much. I think so. I don't think I've missed any. Our
If we could
readers and
find
listen, readers, I mean, our listeners and viewers can tell me if I have, but I think I've always included it.
If we could find a link for that person who was performing that song about Rio, we should put
Oh
that in
yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. That was fun.
Do you
Um,
remember their stage name?
horror logica. Which when I first saw the name, I thought, oh, it's just like a play on the word whore. But
Or horror?
well, no, because it's HORO logica, horror logica. But when
Okay.
I looked it up, horology is in fact the practice, I think, of restoring clocks and timepieces.
Well,
And
he was saying that on
they
stage. Yeah,
said that that's their day job. I mean, whether that's true or if it's just part of their origin story for
it's
their
a
name, I
bizarre
don't know.
origin
But yeah,
story.
but and I was going to make a joke about it, but then I thought maybe I shouldn't. I was going to say, thanks for putting the whore in Horologica or something. But then I was like, maybe that's
Yeah,
inappropriate,
maybe
and that's
inappropriate.
not wasn't their intention with that name. So anyway,
But
I'm
for
glad
anyone,
I'm glad I didn't do it on the night, but now I've done it on the podcast. So
anyone listening, why and wondering why we're talking about this artist or performer in particular, was they were dressed in almost like a carnival, like Brazilian carnival outfit with
mhm,
like a headdress and almost like what like a showgirl or whatever would a dancer would wear in Brazilian or Rio Carnival, and
mhm.
they sang a song called Rio.
Yeah, called Rio, like let's go to Rio or something.
Oh, yeah,
But
come
yeah,
with
it
me to
was fun.
Rio.
It was a
We can
vibe.
go there fast or take it real slow.
Hmm.
Come jump in the ocean. it was really getting it was very camp, and it really got the crowd going.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was a great night. It was a great
It
night.
was. It
But
was.
so we've got the drama of Gaga tickets somewhat behind us, but we still want to try and go
Yeah, we will
either
keep our listeners updated on our Gaga saga.
the
Gaga,
ongoing mayhem.
Gaga saga. Um, Yeah, but there was something I messaged Sean the other day, and I said I think there's something we need to talk about, something we need to address on the podcast. That we've referred to it in very roundabout ways over the last few months, and we're just going to sort of dive straight in. But I suppose we should do some sort of trigger warning or just a sort of advisory that we are going to talk about things like addiction, about eating disorders, about weight, about body image. Anything else?
Morbid
I don't know.
obesity,
Well, yeah, but yeah.
hormonal
So,
dysfunction.
but do you want to lead, Sean, or do you want me to
Well, I can
say
talk.
something?
So, I mean, if people have known this, for people who know both me and Josh, it's no surprise that for most of our adult lives, we've both had health related issues around our weight. So, maybe not health related, but
Yeah, I would maybe
I have.
rephrase that. Well,
I
yeah, you
have.
have definitely.
But I mean, have you not had any from being
Well,
like fatter? I mean, what first of all, let's get the terminology that you and I feel comfortable using. Do you
yeah,
are you okay with the term fat when you
yeah,
talk
fat's
about
fine. I'm happy. I don't think fat has a negative connotation. It shouldn't have a negative connotation, and I'm happy to refer to myself as fat and talk about fatness.
and
Um,
also, I mean, saying fat for us if we're comfortable with it doesn't mean that everybody else has to be comfortable with it. But for us,
no.
it's almost like a shorthand or a shortcut to describe a broader approach to talking about body image or body appearance, because fat could refer to, I don't know, how you feel about yourself. It could be about, like we're talking about, being clinically obese, like we are fat people, we're overweight. So
Hmm.
we could use the term fat interchangeably with overweight or obese
Hmm.
throughout this conversation as well.
Hmm.
Um, are you uh, are you comfortable with talking about like how much you weigh and how much you have weighed in the past?
I'm comfortable with it, but I just, as any listener knows, regular listener knows, my memory is so bad. But yeah, I think I'm happy to sort of, in general terms, talk about it from the data that I can remember.
Okay,
Um,
so Josh and I both have struggled with our weight, and the fact that when I say struggle, I think it's related to compulsive eating, and there are other comorbidities that exist at the same time as that. But for both of us, we have had food addictions, and
and I think also one other sort of general point to clarify, or important point to make, um, is that when we talk about struggling with something, it's 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 an entirely personal thing. Like it's your body, and for everybody out there, you have to, everyone in the world has to decide what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with, and that's not just relating to your body weight, that's relating to so many other things. And so we're not saying that everybody should want to lose weight at all. I think it's a
mm,
personal decision, but yes, for Sean and I, we both have a shared experience of carrying more weight with our in our bodies than we've necessarily wanted to at particular
and
times in our lives.
yeah, and for me in particular, it has led to health issues, and that
Hmm.
was the reason why I decided to take action, uh, like an intervention around my weight, is because my weight had started contributing to other health conditions, such as I was diagnosed as being pre-diabetic,
Hmm.
and I was very, very, very close to being diabetic.
Hmm.
I over the last few years, I've had um, like glandular or hormonal issues around hormone dysfunction,
Hmm.
which the doctors believe was related to my weight. And I think the heaviest that I got, and once again, like people might be listening in different regions and not understand the weight that weight measurements that we use,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
we talk about kilograms, right?
Yeah, we use the
Um,
metric system.
yeah, so I got up to almost 145 kilograms, and that for my height, I was classed as more well clinically obese. I think is the term. It used to be called morbidly obese,
Morbidly.
but I think they've stopped using that term for
And
like
these categories are based around the BMI system, and the BMI system is not perfect at all. It's a far from perfect system to use. And there's a really good episode of a podcast called The Maintenance Phase, which we've talked about before. So I might put that in the show notes as well. There's a podcast episode all about the BMI system and how flawed it is. But in general terms, when we use terms like obese and clinically obese, as you say, is that the new
yeah,
terminology?
yeah.
They are using that BMI system. So anyway,
So,
go ahead.
well, I mean, do you want to talk about what your weight journey, as in like
Hmm.
where
Oh,
you
and
got to with your weight?
well, yeah, and but before I do, you were talking about how it affected your physical health, and of course, the sleep
Oh yeah.
apnea thing, which you've talked about a lot
Oh
on this
yeah.
podcast, and the CPAP machine. Although you can't say for sure that was caused by being overweight, it was. I'm pretty sure it was exacerbated by it.
Oh, definitely.
Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, similarly to Sean, like I've really struggled with my weight my whole life since I was a child, and it's fluctuated a lot. And there have been times in the past where I have been able uh, to focus on it, to exercise and try and modify my eating, and I have successfully reduced my weight before, but it's never been a sustained thing. I always would put that weight back on, and I think that's such a common thing for so many people. It's it's not easy to lose weight, but it's doable in short bursts for some people. But in terms of keeping that weight off and maintaining that lifestyle and those eating patterns and exercise patterns, it's very, very difficult. And so, yeah, I've struggled, and I think at my heaviest I was probably about 100 and I think about 125, maybe up to 130 kilos at my heaviest. And um, and I don't necessarily know if I've had many physical effects of that, but certainly in terms of my mental health, which is, I think, just as important as physical health, it has certainly had huge impacts on my mental health.
Well,
And
it's funny, isn't it, when we talk about no, funny is a term, hilarious.
it's,
When we talk
yes,
about mental health, sometimes it's like the chicken and the speckled egg thing. Like you don't know if the your mental health is contributing more to the weight and body issues and food
and food,
compulsions,
yeah,
or is that contributing more significantly to your mental health? Like it's
yeah.
there's a like an interlocking, intertwining, like positioning of both of those things, and you don't know
It's
which one is the more
it's
powerful.
yeah, it's like almost like a paradox, isn't it? It's like how, how do you have one without the other, or does one cause the other, or I don't know, maybe paradox isn't the right term, but
No,
you
I
know
don't
what I
think
mean. Like
paradox is the right term,
um, but yeah,
and
it's difficult. But anyway, to sort of, I don't want to um drag it out too much, but yeah, so last year, I started using a weight loss injection drug called Mounjaro. And at the time, I knew two people in other countries, other parts of the world, who were using, one was using Mounjaro, one was using, I think, Ozempic or Wegovy. And I chatted a little bit about it to them, and I thought I would like to try it. And so I started, last year, and it's worked incredibly well for me. And I spoke to Sean about it, and he started using it shortly after that too. And I think we've both. Um, I I struggle to think about how to frame it because I don't want the message to be like, "Oh, great, we've lost weight, aren't we?
yeah, yeah,
Aren't we the victors? Aren't we? Hooray for us!" but it's something that we've sort of talked about in a roundabout way on the podcast before. We've talked about our fluctuating weights, and we've also talked about how we've lost weight.
Mm.
And I thought, it's a bit, I don't know if nefarious, maybe that's a bit extreme. It's a bit duplicitous, or it's a bit dishonest, I think, to talk about weight loss without explaining that, we've done it with the help of a medication, with the help of a drug. And
Yeah.
I think it's important. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I just want to say that it is something that we both came to for slightly different reasons.
Hmm.
For me, I can clearly say that I live with compulsive eating condition. I don't know if it's a disorder, but it's a condition. It's something that I've done for decades.
Hmm.
I have not been able to control the consumption of food in my life. I've used food, I suppose, as an emotional crutch. I've used it like I used to say I would eat when I was happy. I would eat when I was sad. I would eat when I was bored. I would eat when I uh, was nervous, anxious. I got good news, bad news, you name it. I would eat all the time, and I was actually talking to Michelle, my sister, who sometimes comments under these videos.
Hmm.
Around the time I was explaining to her about making this intervention with the injectable drug, which the clinical or the trade name for it is tirzepatide, but it
Oh
is
yeah.
available in different forms under different drugs. So I was talking about taking tirzepatide, and Michelle said to me, "Yeah, will you always talk about food. You always are either talking about what you're going to eat or what you
Hmm.
have eaten, or
Hmm.
and it it really is."
I mean, you've built
Um,
a whole online persona around that,
yeah, but for me, it was. I mean, I'm still, I've been in therapy for 6 or 7 years or however long, and I talk about it all the time, and I'm trying to get to sort of the bottom of it. But for me, my compulsive eating condition, I believe, is a trauma response from things that I've gone through in my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, it's gone up and down. And when I feel like I'm in a more stable situation, I'm not as reliant on the food and I can have some sort of control. But I would have so many moments in my life where I wasn't in control or I didn't feel as in control. And
Hmm.
then the overeating would be heightened. And I think it's very difficult for people who haven't had or lived with compulsive eating conditions to understand what it's like and how much it takes up of your
Hmm.
nervous energy or your ability to remain calm and feel well in
Just,
yourself.
yeah, your emotional and mental bandwidth, it really
Yeah.
takes up a lot, and it really takes its toll on you mentally.
Yeah, I would
Um,
think about food all the time. So before this medicine, at the height of my weight and the height of my compulsive eating condition, a regular day for me would be like I would get up and have breakfast. While I was having breakfast, I would also have a snack, so maybe some cookies. I would then go to get the bus for work, and on the way to the bus, I would buy snacks to
mhm,
eat on the bus so I could eat on the way to work. Then I would have lunch at work, and that would be more food than I needed. And then there might also be some sweets and chocolate and cookies at work. Then on the way
mhm,
home from work, I would have to walk past the supermarket and I would go in and I would buy either packets of cookies or sweets or chocolates to eat on the bus on
mhm,
the way home.
mhm,
And I would also get cookies or some sort of snacks or potato chips or whatever to have for that night. I would go home and I would have dinner and I would
mhm,
have a portion that would maybe be about a portion that four people might eat. And then I might
mhm.
go back for seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's a
then
it's a compulsive
yeah,
habit. Now, whether we are not psychiatrists, so we aren't
yeah,
necessarily able to diagnose ourselves or anyone else whether it's an eating disorder, but it's certainly disordered eating.
yeah.
And
And I mean, I haven't had a clinical diagnosis. I have had conversations with medical professionals who
mm,
have said they recognize it as, yeah, disordered eating.
mm,
But I don't know how you go about getting an
Well,
affirmed
yeah,
diagnosis. Like, who tells
yes.
you that?
But also to sort of bring it back to a more personal, journey, which is such an overused cliche term. But I think it's important to say, when I started using the injections, the drug, I can't even say it. Just going to say the
Tirzepatide.
Mounjaro. Um, I I was very ashamed. I admit, when I heard other people using it, I was a bit sort of judgy about it. I thought, well, that's just, it's not cheating, but it's not addressing the root cause. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I've been on antidepressant drugs for many, many years. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
probably at least 10 years, possibly more. And I I've also had lots and lots of therapy, of course, to try and address some of the root causes of depression. But at the end of the day, if you can have multi-pronged attacks or approaches to things, and so with the depression, it's like, yeah, of course, there's a part of me wants to have the therapy and explore, but also if there's a tablet I can take which helps me get through my day and manages my depression symptoms to a point where I can carry on with things in my life, I can do both. And so the more I thought about the availability of these drugs, these weight loss drugs, which suppress your appetite, the more I thought, well, it's not actually that different to taking an antidepressant. Like, if there's uh, a situation, a medical situation that can be treated effectively, and these drugs are very effective, I believe, in my experience, then I don't see a problem with that. But then I suppose as time went on, I became less secretive about it because I actually thought, well, why should I be ashamed? I'm not ashamed about admitting I struggle with depression. I have no shame
Yeah.
about that. I'm happy to talk about that. I'm happy to talk about my use of medication as well. And so I thought it's a bit dishonest in some ways to keep it a secret, because I see people, and if I haven't seen them for a long time, they'll say, "My God, you've lost so much weight. That's great," or whatever, which makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I've done it for me. I haven't done it for anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable that there's this horrible, horrible narrative, this toxic, nasty narrative in society that losing weight is good. And I really, if nothing else, we sort of stress in this episode that that's not the narrative we are putting out into the world at all. We're just talking about our personal experiences and journeys with weight.
Yeah. And I think the problem that I have as a fat person, like, I'm still fat, yeah, even though I've lost a lot of weight, I'm still fat, I'm still obese, I'm in the obese category still,
Mm-hmm.
is the idea that when you lose weight, people don't say to you, "Oh, you've lost weight, that must be great for your health," which would be a different thing. They
Right. No,
say,
no,
"You
it's
look
about your
great."
appearance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about your appearance, and it's
Yep.
so superficial. It's very it all ties back into the politics of appearance and how worthy you are depending on what you look like. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's very upsetting to have people
Yeah.
talk about that. Well, even when I was the fattest that I was, when I was almost 145 kilos, and I would
Mm.
say to people, "Oh, I'm fat." People felt the need to say to me, "Oh, you're not that fat. You're not."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Mate, I am really fat. Like, I'm not saying this for sympathy or
Mm-hmm.
anything. I'm telling you, I'm a fat person, and this conversation is,
Yeah.
it's up to me to say whether I'm fat or not."
And this assumed pre-existing notion in society that fat equals bad, and it's
Yeah.
not. And that's why I'm in some ways I've been quite hesitant about talking about this with friends and family on the podcast, etc. But I just think it's so important to stress that it's a personal choice. Like, it's people being fat can be a choice. Some people
Yeah.
might just be like, I'm happy being fat. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm happy with who I am. And I think that's fucking righteous. That's great. Um, but there are other people who are fat as a trauma response or from eating disorders or, a whole host of other things.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible narrative in society that, weight loss is something we should all be working towards. It's horrible.
Yeah, because it doesn't really address when you talk about weight loss, it's never really addressing a human as an individual or from a holistic approach. It is
No.
talking about you need to lose weight, do it. It's not like so when I my weight loss journey is not really a weight loss journey. It's a mental health and personal well-being journey. Like I need help and assistance with stabilizing my mental health.
Hmm. Hmm.
A benefit of that is that I'm losing weight, which then lessens the stress on my body and stops being as much of a contributor as it has been to my physical health.
Hmm.
And I was pre diabetic. I asked the NHS if I could have this medicine, which was shown to help people with diabetes, but also help people with compulsive eating conditions. And I
Hmm.
was told by the NHS I wasn't entitled to it unless I was diabetic. And I
Hmm.
said, but since I've been seeing you for treatment, I've become pre diabetic.
Hmm.
And I also had been referred to the eating disorder clinic. So
Hmm.
it was recognized by the NHS that I needed an intervention around my eating compulsion. And they said, well, you're on the waiting list for the eating disorder clinic. You're only pre diabetic. We can reconsider giving the medicine when you become diabetic.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
absurd,
had
isn't
to
it? It's an
make the
absurd
choice
situation.
to go and buy the medicine privately because I knew I was in crisis
Hmm.
and I couldn't let it go on another 6 months where I became diabetic
Hmm.
because it might then be irreversible health conditions for me because
Yeah.
of that. But on my own, without that medicine, I didn't have the tools to get myself out of that situation. This had been
Hmm.
going on and off, up and down, from manageable to out of control for decades. And so I made the decision to um, go to a private doctor or a private route to get prescribed the medicine.
Hmm.
There's Mounjaro, the version of tirzepatide, and started taking it. Now, for people who are unsure how drugs like this work, they interrupt or suppress um, the like appetite. What do you call it? Like centers in your brain, like
Hmm.
the parts that tell you that you're hungry.
Hmm.
And no one really knows exactly why your brain tells you this or why it does it more to some people than others. But it's the same as how other addictions work, like
Hmm.
why some people have centers in their brain that tell them they want to smoke or they need nicotine, or other people to drink, or other people that they need to have sex. They
Hmm.
need, it might be related to dopamine. It might be related to other sorts of chemicals in the body. But for me, I mean, for a long time, I also had an issue with alcohol and I stopped drinking over nearly 3 years ago. But
Hmm.
for me, with food, I could not find a way to stabilize how I interacted with food. I couldn't do it.
And I think uh, it's. I think you just have to be so careful, don't you, with the way you phrase things when you talk about this, because for if you were going to compare it to other things, other addictions, there are
Mm-hmm.
so many. There are so with excess weight. I think broadly speaking, there's quite a lot of peer researched evidence that shows that carrying, and I have to be so careful when I say this, but carrying around a lot of excess weight can have detrimental effects on your body.
Yes.
It can carry significant health risks. I mean, there's also plenty of evidence to say that being, underweight, just slightly underweight, can have equally, risky
Yeah.
things. And I think, neither of us are particularly qualified to talk about it. But my point was going to be that, when there are, and let's just call it food addiction,
Yeah.
which is, just a very easy to use term for a whole host of things. But let's say food addiction. I think when there, everybody knows the risks of excess alcohol consumption, excess narcotic consumption, excess smoking. Everybody knows what the health risks are. And I think that in some ways it's so unfair for people in society because there's this horrible narrative set up that if you're fat, if you carry around excess weight, it's your fault and you have to be the one to fix it. Whereas I think, if there was a drug available that would, and I don't, maybe there are, I don't know, because I don't smoke cigarette, I don't smoke anything. But if there was a drug available which would stop people craving cigarettes completely, and it would therefore have a huge impact on the number of lung cancer illnesses and diagnoses and resulting deaths, I think there would be very, very overwhelming public support for something like that. I think it would be the
Yeah,
same if there was something like that. And I think there actually is a drug that you can take for alcoholism, which sort of stops you wanting to drink. Um, but and I'm going to talk about other eating disorders now, but I think if it was the opposite situation, I think with people with anorexia and people with bulimia, I
hmm,
think if there was a drug that you could give to people with those eating disorders that would essentially stop them in their tracks, that would stop those eating disorders, I believe that probably 90% or more people just out on the street would say, yes, I support that. And yet
yeah,
it's so interesting to me that when you look at the reverse situation, when you have people who have a food addiction and they eat to excess to the point where it does have detrimental effects on their body and their mental
yeah,
health, there's much less public support for a drug-based intervention for that,
yeah.
isn't there? And it's so
Well,
interesting how,
there's also the idea that you talked about how it's a fat person's fault. That's the idea that people
mm,
have.
yeah,
But it's also that the idea is that we're stupid or that we
yeah,
don't understand how
yeah,
science works. We don't
yeah,
understand, oh, well, you just need to learn to eat better. You need to learn about calorie
mm.
counting. And it's like,
Well, you
no,
had that. What's that? I
oh,
don't know if you told that story in the podcast when you went into, is it Boots in Sheffield?
what was that one? I thought
Was
you were
it
going to talk
for?
about the health coach I was saying.
Well, no, God, no, that's another one. But no, when you went into, was it for a COVID vaccination, perhaps? And the woman at the Boots counter was just like trying to explain that calories to you or something.
Yeah, I can't remember
Do you
that
remember that?
story.
Anyway,
No,
but yeah,
I
no,
don't
you're
remember.
right. It's
But with
like, oh,
with
you're
my health
stupid.
coach, she said to me, like, I had to go. This is all part of trying to obtain treatment and support through the NHS. I had to go through to see a lifestyle coach for months and months and months, like once or twice a month. And these sessions would go for an hour and a half. And this person would say to me, right, you need to keep a food diary. And I
Mm.
said, yeah, but what you're getting me to do is kind of pointless because I'm going to eat like this isn't helping me. I have disordered eating. I have
Well,
compulsion that makes me want to eat everything. So I'm just writing down everything. It's not making me reflect on what is right or wrong or better for me. It is just making me see, yeah, how much I do eat. And also, she said, oh, you just got to know if you go out for dinner and you want to have an extra dessert or something, have that, but write down how many calories it is and then eat less, that much less the next day. I said, I have an eating disorder. I have a compulsive eating disorder. I
yeah,
said, I will eat that extra cake and then I'll go home and eat a packet of cookies. You don't
yeah.
understand what I'm saying
It's
to you.
not coming from a rational, you
No,
know,
it's not.
logical part of the brain. And
Yeah.
also,
And
what is the point of keeping that diary? There's a sort of, there's a very, even not overt, but there's a sort of underlying threat of shame in that, like, oh, so that you can say, oh, look, whether it's you yourself doing it, like putting
yeah,
shame on yourself, or whether you take the food diary to that person and they say, well, look, you had this many calories that day. And it's just like, yeah, I'm not a
yeah,
fucking idiot.
yeah.
Like, I
And then the
understand how calories
the
work.
the doctor said to me recently how for a checkup and just a sort of touch base with the doctor instead of the health coach.
Hmm.
And the doctor said to me, you need to stop seeing this person. And this
Okay.
is in the same clinic, in the same practice. She said,
Yeah.
I don't want you to go and see this person who keeps telling you about how many grams of brown rice you should eat. She said, this isn't helping
Didn't
you.
they say to you, didn't that health coach say to you, ever thought about just having a smoothie for lunch or something?
Oh, yeah.
And it's
And I
just
was
like,
like, and I said, every time I would go there and I'd say, I understand how, like, the general, science of food in
Hmm.
versus how much energy I use.
Hmm.
I understand how that correlates to weight gain. I said, but I cannot control my eating for the majority of the time that I'm awake. I can't
Yeah.
control it. And
Yeah.
so my doctor finally said she understood and she's sorry that they haven't helped me. I mean, I've been asking for help for years.
Mm.
And I have been referred to the mental health team
Hmm.
now to try and get support. But once again, it's the NHS. I might wait for a very long time. But also, just to touch on the tirzepatide again and these sorts of weight loss drugs,
Mm.
some of them were developed, they helped people regulate their blood sugar. So they were developed for people living with
Diabetics.
diabetes.
Hmm.
And so what they do is they suppress those sort of compulsion, appetite centers of the brain, but they also slow down the digestion in your body.
Hmm.
So when you do eat, because the food is taking a long time to pass through your digestion,
Mm.
you do feel fuller. So you've got that the compulsive thing in your brain is switched off to some degree. Plus, your body is feeling full and is sending signals to your brain saying, "Yeah, I'm full."
Hmm.
It helps control that compulsive urge to want to eat. And in my experience, when I took the drug, it happened quite instantly. Like from the first time that I injected this drug, and it's a weekly injection, I felt that urge almost disappear. And over those first few weeks, it's very hard for me to explain to people who haven't had a food addiction. But the freedom that I felt from feeling compelled every minute I was awake to be eating something,
Mm.
I found myself with more time and I was able to focus. I felt like it helped me just focus and not be so scattered because all I could do previous to that was think about food.
Mm.
And
It's
I would,
yeah, it's a very hard. It's an experiential thing. It's very difficult to try and
yeah,
explain it with words and language. But yeah, to have that part of your brain so completely obsessed with food, and going back to sort of drawing parallels with depression, it's a very, in some ways, it's kind of easy to see where we've gotten to as a society where, consumption, whether it's food or anything else, capitalist consumption is just, that's what our whole society is based around now. And the availability of food and the availability of very high calorific
mhm,
food stuffs all around us at all times of the day. We can get them without even like, leaving our house. We can order stuff to be delivered. It's no wonder, I suppose, that people with excess weight is becoming more and more prevalent around the world.
yeah,
And it's I think almost futile to try and solve, it's like that food counselor person you were talking about. It's like you're not, you're trying to get back to the root, the cause of the issue rather than just treat the symptoms. And it's the same with mental health. Like, my depression could well be caused by the fact that I live in 2000, I'm alive in 2025 when nothing about my lifestyle is natural. I drive to work. I sit in front of a computer for hours at a time. There are so many things which perhaps as a species, as a biological animal, we have not evolved for, both physically or in terms of our brain development. We're doing things that are so um, opposed to what we've evolved to be. There's no
yeah,
point in trying to sort of, in some ways, get treat the cause of the issue. Let's just treat the symptom, right? And
yeah,
I think it's very very similar with this. Like, you're not going to change society and change humans' relationship with food and change the way we've developed and the availability of calories in our everyday lives. But if you can treat the symptoms of that, then surely that's what's important.
yeah.
Um,
And it's so like the wellness industry, and I include the medical industry in this because they sell medicine and it really is about quick fixes and yeah, not thinking about underlying causes. But
mhm.
it's also all related to like you just don't know the secret to doing it. I'm going to
Mm.
tell you how to do it and then go and do it.
Well,
And
yeah. Talk
that's
about scams, like where we
that's all
started
the
this episode.
messaging we get over and over and over again. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this person's going to help you and they're going to help you write a meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I have
Mm-hmm.
to sit down with that person. At the end of it, I say, okay, but do you understand I have a compulsive eating disorder?
Mm-hmm.
So I understand this, and I work for a food nutrition charity. I understand what nutrient dense food is. I know what recommended portion size is. I know all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I walk past Morrison's on the way home and they've got 59p jumbo packet of bourbon biscuits, I'm going to go in and buy them and eat them all by the time I get home.
Yeah.
That's what I do. It's I other people use other sorts of drugs as a maybe as a trauma response or even just a pure addiction, like by chance it happened.
Yeah.
One of mine is food. Like I
Yeah.
said, it used to be alcohol, and
And it's,
probably
it's I'm not saying it's easier with other substances. Of course, if you have an addiction issue, it's a very difficult thing to manage. But I think a lot of people do say this, that with food it's so different, because with other things you can just stop them. You don't have to smoke cigarettes, you don't have to take narcotics, you don't have to drink alcohol
mhm.
to live, but everybody has to eat. Like, it's a
Well,
basic human need. And so it's very difficult when it's not something that you can cut out completely. You cannot cut food out completely.
yeah,
It's very, very difficult, or
and
impossible, perhaps.
and that's right. So yeah, just to clarify that statement again, it is possible to cut those things out. For some people, it does feel impossible.
Yes, yes.
But with food, you're right. Like, even if you sit down and make yourself a nice salad with quinoa and tofu and barley and whatever, high in
Hmm.
protein,
Yeah,
low
all
carbs,
the.
it's nice. If for someone like me with compulsive eating condition or disorder, I would then keep eating that dish until it was all gone. So
Hmm.
even if it was the healthier version, I would eat more calories than my body needs
Hmm.
because I want to just keep consuming. And then that's all gone. And then it wouldn't have quenched the whatever it is in me, the hole I'm trying to fill, whatever way you want to look at it. I would then go and look for something else. And
Hmm.
often the foods that do make us feel or make me feel the way that I want to feel are foods like that are high in sugar, high in saturated fat, high in
Yeah,
carbs. So
yeah.
they're obviously not good for personal health
Hmm.
because when you eat those sorts of foods in the quantities that I did do,
Hmm.
they'd lead to weight gain. And
And
some of
that's
those,
why I was going to say, that's why, like, it's not only offensive, it's just it's asinine, I think, to for somebody to suggest to somebody with disordered eating like that. It's just absurd to say, "Oh, have you thought about having a smoothie for breakfast?" It's just like, what the fuck are you talking
nonsense,
about?
isn't it?
Like, it's
So,
absolute nonsense.
so for me, the being on the tirzepatide slash Mounjaro has been, quite life changing. Like, I've lost uh, about 45 kilos since
Hmm.
I've been on it. And but what it's done, like, so for me, I'm not like, the success isn't that I look skinnier. That's not the
Exactly.
success for me.
Exactly.
The success for me is that my back doesn't hurt anymore. I used to not be able to get out of bed because of the back pain that I would experience from my weight.
Mm.
My blood results, like, I was pre-diabetic. It's now smack in the middle of the normal range. It's not even near the danger zone.
Hmm.
I had zero testosterone readings. It's now back in the normal range. When I was heavier, I had really high prolactin, another
Hmm.
hormone imbalance.
Hmm.
That's now back in the normal range.
Hmm.
So I'm also got the, like we were saying, the CPAP machine for all the CPAP
CPAP
recappers out
recap.
there.
Hmm.
That's helping me, but obviously, when you don't weigh as much, your body is able to rest more, and
Yep.
you don't have as many, or you shouldn't have as many breathing difficulties. So yeah, for me, this going on this medicine, which is extremely expensive, and
Hmm.
doing it privately, was an emergency action into sort of you know intervention that I took for
It's a
myself.
circuit breaker, basically, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's yeah,
and it's
yeah.
given me a chance to relax. Like, I feel for the first time in my adult life, I have had moments over the last 8 months
Mm.
of feeling relaxed.
Yeah,
Like, it's hard for me to explain to people who haven't lived with addiction of any form, but normally all I can hear is white noise. Even when I've got
yeah,
nothing on, no work deadlines, nothing, I would feel in a heightened sense of alarm or stress all the
mm.
time.
And that's
And
it. Like, I think, I know people who struggle with other addictions. And when I say struggle, I'm talking about people who have struggled with alcoholism and have
mhm,
been sober for years and years and years.
mm,
It's every day is still a struggle for them.
yep,
Every
yep,
day, even though, yes, they've remained sober and they're successful in inverted commas, they still struggle with it. And
yep,
so, yeah, it is an incredibly liberating experience to be relieved of a lot of that mental anguish
yeah,
around food. And it's hard to explain. But the other thing I wanted, because I'm just conscious of the time, and the other thing I did want to the other point I wanted to get across, and that is that in some ways I was very reluctant to talk about it in with friends and family and on the podcast, of course, because it sounds like such a sort of such a what's the word, like sort of centering ourselves in the conversation. And in some ways I was very reluctant to do that because I do think, as we said at the top of the episode, it's such an important personal thing. Like, your weight,
mhm,
your body is always your decision. But there was also a sort of a conflicting or a competing voice, and that was in the sense that I have a lot of people in my life now who are also using Mounjaro,
mhm,
and some of them I'm the only other person that knows, and I
mhm,
respect that. And of course, I would never out them, so to speak. I would never
yeah,
tell anyone else. But it really, to me, it really highlighted how much shame there is in seeking help for food addiction,
yeah,
and I really, really wish there wasn't. I really, really want to stress how it's not it's not your fault. No addiction is your fault,
yeah,
and there should be no blame put on yourself. And there's no shame in seeking help, just in the same way that there is no shame in seeking help for mental health issues or any
yeah.
health issues. There is no shame. It's not your fault. And there's so much narrative out there that says that it is, and it's not, and it's,
And part of my journey has been to be completely open about it because I I have learned that the reason I've gotten myself into situations where I haven't been able to get help or dig myself out of a hole is because I've let shame compound on top of me, whether it's
Mhm.
to do with my weight, my sexual health, my dental health, my other physical health, my mental health, whatever it is. I've tried to live in silence, and a lot of it has been fear. And I've not looked for help, and I've not been honest, and I've not just laid all my cards out on the table and said, this is what it is.
Mhm.
But now, through many years of therapy and now being on this medication, I've had clarity of mind. And this is my journey. I'm not saying everyone should do this, but I've had clarity of mind to feel, to not to put the shame out there and let people do what they want with it. It's not
Yeah,
mine.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
mine. It's what I
absolutely.
perceived it was going to be. So when I meet people at my events now, maybe they haven't come to one of my events for 5 years or 3 years, and they see me, they say, "Oh, you've lost a lot of weight."
Hmm.
I say, "Oh yeah, I'm on this medication that helps me control my eating."
Yeah,
If they want to
that's
ask me more, I talk to them about it. If they don't, I just say, okay, thanks. Nice
yeah.
for you to come. I hope you have a good time. I just say it. Like, to me, I want it to be, from the minute I started using it, it was important for me to not carry any shame attached to it because it was a positive thing I was doing for myself. It
Mm,
was a positive journey I was on after decades and decades of hiding away from the truth. This is the
mm,
truth. And the truth
mhm.
is, I have mental health burdens, I have compulsive eating disorder, and this is a tool I'm using to help myself, along with therapy and other things. And
Mm.
being honest about it is the best thing I can do for me.
Yeah, and I think, just to sort of stress again, that it is a personal choice, and there is no shame in seeking help, and there's also no shame in saying, I accept who I am and the way I look, and I don't want to change that. I think that is absolutely your prerogative to do that. And so, yes, for me, I am glad I've sought help for this, disordered eating or eating disorder, if that's how we want to sort of self-diagnose. But it's not, it shouldn't, it shouldn't be seen as cheating. It shouldn't be seen as sort of, oh, that's the lazy option. But B, it equally shouldn't be seen as um, a solution for everybody. Like it's still very much a personal choice. You know, in the same way, I suppose that if somebody has an addiction to something else and they actually don't want to get help for it, well, that's their decision. You know, that's their body, it's their life, it's their choice. So
Yeah,
it's the same. And you know, I just think food is in such a different category because it's, I don't know, there's just so much narrative around it, and there's so much, you know, there are magazines, there are like thousands of publications dedicated to food. Like it's such a strange thing in our society. Like we don't just simply eat to exist. We
yeah.
there's a
And
whole sort of fetishization around food.
and most people watching this will know that my blogger name, online personality, is called Fat Gay Vegan,
Mm,
and in a similar way, like I used that as a personal political tool to denounce that idea that fat people should be ashamed or should hide away. Like I use that as a way to take power over something that was used to shame me or put me down. Now,
mm,
two things can exist. I could be fat gay vegan and resisting that oppression of that name that puts me down, but also I am still also struggling with food addiction, and it's a very complex situation, and
yeah.
everyone's going to have their own situation they're in that is just as complex. What I would say is, unless somebody asks you to join them in a conversation about their weight or appearance,
Hmm.
don't say anything to anyone about their weight or
Exactly.
appearance
Yeah.
unless there is a history, an agreed history between you and this other person to do it.
Hmm.
The other day, I had a professional colleague say to me, "Oh, I saw you online the other day, and you're looking amazing." And I said, "Oh, what? So I wasn't looking amazing before that?"
Mm,
And
mm,
it really annoyed me that I was then in that moment reduced to that person's opinion of what is good and what is bad from an appearance point of view.
yeah.
Don't
And
talk to me about it. I didn't ask
in
you
some
to.
ways it doesn't, you know, in some ways it's just so normalized in society, isn't it? It's so
Yeah,
normalized that to think, you know, to be, you know, we were talking about it last week as well, I think, you know, to be thin and to look young is sort of the goal that we supposedly were supposed to be aiming for. But that's
yeah,
absolute. It's a horrible. It's a noxious, horrible
yeah.
narrative that's out there. And so yeah, don't comment. Like just
No.
keep your comments to yourself.
And it's different, right? Like you and I have known each other for, I don't know what, 25, 26 years? Or 20, no, more,
28 years. 28
28
years.
years.
Hmm.
You and I can talk openly to each other about
Mm,
appearance, perception of each other. We have developed that trusted dialogue and
yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody that doesn't know me and has not been invited into my personal well-being discourse to
Mm,
talk to me about what I look like
no.
or what they perceive is going on with me. Now,
Mm,
when people say to me, "Oh, you look great," or "You look like you've lost a lot of weight," I turn around and I say, "Oh, yeah, well, you should see my blood results because you know what? Why I started to lose weight was because I was pre-diabetic and I had no
mm,
testosterone." And
yeah.
a lot of the time, people just shut up and they want to get out of there
Yeah.
because people don't want to hear about that. They just want the surface discussion about how great you
Yeah.
look. And then they want you to say, "Oh, yeah, isn't it great? I've gone down like 10 sizes in my jeans." Whereas
Hmm.
really, it should be about people's personal well being that is
Yeah,
being
which is
celebrated.
also no one else's fucking business unless they bring it up
No,
anyway. But yeah, you're right. Like to
yeah,
sort of deflect from that horrible narrative, that
yeah.
toxic narrative in society. It's
Yeah, I
yeah,
talk to them about it, and I want to throw it back in people's faces, and I say, well, because I'm on prostate medication as well, and I have retrograde ejaculation. I found that losing weight has actually helped with that. And then
that's
people
a
are
that's
like,
a
what?
conversation killer, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm not into people sticking their nose in, and I think people need to learn about practicing empathy
Yeah,
about
yeah.
personal. Such a weird thing, isn't it? But
Yeah,
anyway,
but just
to,
I think yeah, Sean and I both were at a point where you know our weight loss had become quite noticeable, and people were commenting on it, and maybe not
Mhm.
so much you know our podcast audience because some of you may or may not know us in real life or have seen us before this, but um, we just felt that you know it was the right thing to just say yes. We are taking this drug. We're managing the symptoms of our our eating habits with a drug, and it's working for us, and that's what's going on. And so it's
Yeah. And
yeah.
two things here. Like, one is, if go back and watch episode 1, and you'll see my my drastic weight loss. You will actually see it. It's
Mhm.
like I have lost.
And me to a lesser extent, I think, because I'd already been using it for a while before we started. Yeah, but
Um,
even then,
and you'll see it. But also, you know, there is a lot of disinformation about these types of drugs out there. And I think the most pervasive one is that it's for people who are lazy, who want to take a shortcut to
yeah,
looking better, to
yeah,
get the summer bikini body.
yeah,
I'm telling you from my personal experience, it is a mental health tool for me. It is a
yeah,
tool
yeah,
to feel better and to not feel out of control. And it's working for me. And
yeah,
I would hazard, I would say to everyone, it's your choice, it's your consideration about what you need. But this is a tool that I'm using to
mhm,
help manage my mental health
yeah.
issues.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. It's not about getting, summer body, whatever, beach body ready at all. It's there's so much misinformation out there.
Yeah.
Um but anyway, so it's been quite an intense, serious episode. Hopefully not construed as negative. But
I don't even care if people think it's negative. Life is negative. I mean, compared to the reality of life, our conversations are a fucking walk in the park. I mean,
well,
life
that's true.
is
That's
life
true.
is an absolute nightmare.
As is trying to get tickets for the Lady Gaga show in
Well,
Manchester.
coming back to the real crux of the issue, yes, Gaga.
Yeah. Um, anyway, so I think we should wrap up just because I'm looking at the time. And is there anything else we want to add? I mean, if you have questions about it, send us a comment. We're happy to talk about it in future episodes. It doesn't just have to be a one episode thing.
Yeah, I mean, I
We
can add
can,
it to the CPAP recap. We can also
yeah,
have a MJ relay, or what could we call it?
yeah, we'll come up with a snazzy little term. Um,
And
all right, well, let's,
shout out to everyone else. If anyone else wants to write and say that they're on any form of this medication or have been considering
yeah,
it and they want to talk about it, leave a comment. We
yeah.
can give you a shout out, whatever. If you don't want to
There's
say
no
anything,
shame.
don't.
There's no shame.
Yeah, and it's all like, I hope everyone is just on their best journey and doing what's right for them. It is a really, really tough world to live in at the best of times. And if you add stuff like, dealing with childhood trauma and addiction and all that sort of thing, it's tough. And
Yeah,
anything you can find that works for you is a bonus. And I'm happy for you if that's your journey. And if it's not right for you either, I'm happy for you as well. But
yeah,
we're all in the
absolutely.
same boat, really.
Yeah, let's just choose to love ourselves and each other.
Hmm.
All right, we should wrap up.
Yeah.
You can subscribe to this podcast either on YouTube or on Spotify, and you can find links to find what Sean and I are up to in the show notes. But otherwise, I think we'll be back this time next week.
Yeah, and I think you put the link for sponsoring Nivi running the
I
Hackney
did.
Half in the
Yeah,
marathon.
I'll
So
include that
maybe
in
we
this week's
we
as
can put it
well.
again. But yeah, if you would like to help support the charity that I work for, the food security charity, that helps give people with extra support needs access to nutrient dense food, you can support our friend Nivi, who's running the Hackney Half Marathon.
Yeah,
So
please do
yeah,
support them. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us on this interesting topic, and we'll be back in your feeds next week.
okay. See you.
Bye.